why there's such a fight for inheritance and estate tax. It's not just the billionaires and the multi-millionaires. Everyone is freaking out about it because of this shift in money that's about to happen. Now, I'm gonna tell you why. People will agree that they want an inheritance tax or an estate tax on people that are very wealthy, right? That's not hard to agree. You don't want to say somebody who's worth $500 million and they leave it to their kids, they should be paying, $100 million or $200 million of that into the economy that helped them build it rather than going straight to their kids. There's no arguments there except for maybe those people. But here's what people are concerned about, okay? Here's what people are concerned about, okay? It's always the slippery slope argument. I don't want to say argument, but the slippery slope idea, right? So people are worried that if they give the government an inch, they'll take a mile, right? And it's happened many, many times before in the past. And so, and then you always hear other people that'll come back and say, well, the government wouldn't do that. Well, we see the government push boundaries all the time. Sometimes they go away with it, sometimes they don't. I mean, we just saw the governor, whether you like guns or don't like guns, we just saw the governor of New Mexico unilaterally overstep the Constitution and tell everybody they can't carry their guns anymore. Like, whether you agree with carrying legally, licensed carrying or not, it's the law, and a governor just walked in and was just like, no. Now, sure, there's a big fight going on, but we see it all the time, right? And we see on the right, we see sides where they'll go in and try to make a ban on same-sex marriages, even though it's totally legal, right? Like, it's like, you can't do that. You have to abide by the law of the land, all right? Okay? Now, let's move on. I remember when chat was on screen. I don't know how to get it back, man. I really don't know how to get it back, okay? All right, so let's talk about this. So estate tax, right? So this is basically like everybody in their head wants to think of like the Vanderbilts, right? Like there's this giant fucking mansion house or whatever out in some wood with like some trees and whatever, and you got all these multi bedrooms and rooms and whatnot, and it's like some okay, and there's like a big garden, and there's like all this other shit. Like it's this big, and everybody wants to think of this person. Now there are people out there that have that kind of wealth, they just hide it better now. But the idea is that the person who owns all of this and didn't hide it or transfer it or put it into companies and transfer those companies or whatever, when they die and this money gets transferred to the next generation, whether it's the wife, the second wife, the fourth wife, the wife died and it's the stripper girlfriend, the kids, the dogs, the gardeners, whatever, that money is now going from this person to these people. And because these people didn't actually earn the money, the people before them did, then there should be some taxation on that. I don't have a problem with that per se. I mean, I feel like there's always going to be an argument of, well, if that person made that money, then why are we taking it from them? And others are going to say, well, that money might have been made through exploitation, depending on what the money came from, so therefore it should go back. But then again, the government takes that money and just sends it overseas and doesn't go to the people that were exploited anyway, so that was always a fucking lie. But either way, I feel like people can agree that somebody worth, $10 billion, there's no problem with them getting taxed on inheritance tax, right? Or an estate tax. The problem is that whether it's true or it's just a scare tactic, people believe that if we allow this to happen, then people with this, it'll happen to, and then people with this, which is still out of reach, and then to this, right? $1 million. Millionaire used to be the boogeyman. It used to be a word of that was the boogeyman, right? Whether it was like that was your goal in life to be a millionaire, or if you were like, oh, these millionaires don't pay anything. Now it's billionaire. And it's sad to say, but $1 million ain't shit. Back in the 90s, if you were a millionaire, bro, everybody wanted to be you. Everybody wanted to be around you because $1 million was worth a lot of money back then. And the markets were good, especially leading up to 2001, and it was a good time. Now $1 million, you can't even retire with $1 million. Especially if you're on a fixed income early, you're fucked if you have another year like this past year or past 2 years. So people are worried about this. Now, why are people worried about this? Stocky, I'll never see $1 million. Stocky, I don't care if a person with $1 million has this. It's not that. It's assets. It's not cash. This is where that big understanding. Like, I understand when people that are young or people that are struggling, because I've been there. I was young. I struggled horribly in my life. I get it when the idea of, well, these people have too much, and if they give some up or it's taken from them, it can make all of our lives better. If that was the case, everybody would be on board with it. But we all know, right? And in this case, people don't understand that taxing people more doesn't do shit because they don't have money. They don't have incomes. That's why I always say it's the loopholes and not the fucking actual law. The government has no problem with raising taxes on rich people. Rich people don't make income. Half of them have a company and they pay themselves a $50,000 salary and pay themselves $100 million a year in stocks. That's not income. That's assets. So if you're taxing income, you make no money. So of course people who make 100, 200,000 are freaking out because they're like, I actually have income that I have to do. I'm afraid that it's going to come for me, right? Or it's not going to do this. So let's get back to estate tax. The idea is that the estate tax is taxes on the assets that are transferred down, not the cash. And in order to cover those taxes, sometimes you would have to sell off the assets, right? Because this guy he may have $10 billion net worth, but he may have $800,000 in cash. So if they're inheriting the house, there's a tax on it. If they're inheriting the boat, the yacht, the cars, not that I'm making excuses, those people, right? Because eat the rich or whatever, but it's taxes. So now if you want to, unless you have that cash, you then have to sell that asset in order to cover the cash or the taxes on it. There's other ways of doing it if you have stock options and stuff, but I'm just giving a generalized idea. Well, people are worried about these upping the estate tax, even on these people, because they're worried that it could get to $1 billion. Because let me tell you something right now. Most young people have a misunderstanding of how assets and how money work and how time works. And if you told a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, hey, we want to raise the estate tax on anything over $1 million, I can almost guarantee you that very few of them would object to it. This knowledge drop is heat. Oh, baby, we just getting started. Exclamation point, nope. Okay. Why don't we just nationalize the means of production? Well, sure. Give everybody means of production. Spread it evenly. Now, there's no growth. There's no exports. There's no imports, because how do you get everybody to agree how much they're going to sell their product to another country for, or how much they're going to pay for another country, or sign a contract or an economic agreement? Now you have no imports or exports. Therefore, you've become self-reliant on an isolationist government and economy. And then you go into tribalism, anarchy, until people get scared, and then one person rises up and says they can fix it, so now you've become fascist. And in the meantime, you're most likely going to be invaded or destroyed for your natural resources in the meantime by countries who are growing and more powerful. Do you think economic collapse is possible within the next 10 years? Sure, one solar flare and we're all fucked. Back to what I was saying. So if the vast majority of voting age younger people, right, let's say that most of them don't show up to vote, but let's say voting age young people say, okay, anybody with over $1 million in assets when they die and they leave it to their family, they should be taxed more on that, because $1 million sounds like a lot. And it kind of is a lot. It's not as much as it used to be, right? How many people do you know under the age of 30 have $1 million? Not a lot. Almost no one has $1 million. We always somehow, for some reason, we always implement this idea in our head that net worth is cash. And it's because we don't have assets until we start getting older. So let's say younger people, you say, hey, listen, we are going to start raising the tax on anybody with $1 million or more in inheritance tax or estate tax, right? Well, it sounds good, but they don't realize they're fucking themselves. Why? Because that's a combined $1 million. By the time you're 70, 60, 70, if you don't have double that, you're not even retired. That's nothing. But we don't have that understanding of how much that is. I want you to think about this, right? Let's say your parents or grandparents die, right? Because these people are struggling. Let's say you're 22 years old, okay? And you're struggling. And let's say your parents unfortunately have an accident or something happens, right? And let's say they're 50. Okay? And they own a house, which right now could be worth $700,000. Okay? They have stocks and 401ks, another $350,000. Right? They have, I don't know, maybe some other assets that could be sold off, whatever. And they got like 1.5 million. Right? That's assets. That's if they don't have student debts. But let's just say, and let's say you have 4 brothers and sisters. Well, your parents have some debt, so they've got to sell off the house and to take care of the medical bills and the funeral and some debt and stuff like that. And now it's going to be split up. Well, guess what? You're going to get a windfall from that. Doesn't make up for losing your parent, but you just got less of a windfall because you raised inheritance and estate tax. Okay? Now, this is not me trying to scare people off from asking for, or wanting more estate tax. I'm just saying that sometimes people don't understand how it can affect them, right? Now, no one is disagreeing people 10 billion, 1 billion, 100 million. I'm telling you the reason why some people are scared of raising the estate tax on those people with $1 billion is because they're afraid that it could trickle down and it could be across the board estate tax and it could fuck them in the future too. What are we talking about? Estate tax is 13 million at the moment. I just started this whole thing with why people are afraid of voting to increase it or lower the threshold because of these things. I just said we all agree that people making a lot of money. Oh my God. From now on, I'm just going to turn chat off. I can't. I got to get the fox out. I have to get the fox out. I cannot do this. What are you talking about? Bro, just go to the next thing. This is boring. Yo, humping you too. Thank you for the prime, baby. Appreciate you.